by 2030 and will enable us to put skilled jobs around the UK, but also tackle the climate crisis. I don't think it's an either or. It's not binary in that regard. You can't ignore it. You can't stop the road and get off. There is a problem. We know that there's a problem, and we've got a solution to resolve it. But that means giving people the opportunity to change their behaviours, creating the jobs for the future, and not looking backwards to to oil that is not going to meet our targets in that respect. We've got a programme that will tackle the climate crisis and create those jobs for the future, and that's what people want to see, not being penalised in a way that they can't afford to do the right thing. People want to do the right thing. They just need to be on that journey that enables them to take part in that and not be penalised for it.
I'm mindful of any questions that are too inside baseball, but do you think you should have managed expectations in management a bit better? I mean, you did let expectations run absolutely rampant about the possibility of taking Boris Johnson's seat, and then yesterday it suddenly dawned on a lot of people in the Labour Party that actually it might not be.
Well, look, I mean, I was on the ground in Ipswich. I mean, we had a fantastic candidate, Danny, and there was thousands of activists on there. The idea that we didn't know that there was an issue on utilisers for the birds, we did know that, and we know that there's an issue that both the Conservatives and Labour are going to have to tackle, and that's pretty clear from that result. But we narrowly lost on what was a Conservative seat. It's disappointing that we didn't get over the line, but we know there's work to do. We're not complacent, regardless of the historic win we had in Selby, and we're going to move forward, putting an alternative, credible plan forward so we can have the change at the next general election.
Angela Rayner, Deputy Leader of the Labour Party, thank you very much indeed. Chris Mason, if you were Keir Starmer this morning, top people in Labour, how will they be interpreting what happened in Uxbridge and how they should read across from that to the general election?
I think what you heard there, was Labour's post-mortem in Uxbridge, what you're hearing in private is a rather sharper analysis, which is one that if you go into a by-election,
is he stalking a candidate?
You can see as the number one issue a cost of living crisis, and yet you are the authors of policy that could add £90 a week to the bills of some of the people that you're persuaded to vote for you, then don't be surprised if it's rather difficult for you. What's striking about the expectation management that Labour have done is that actually, as late as last night, it tilted in the other direction. They were nervous about Selby and Ainsley in North Yorkshire, given the colossal majority they had to try to overcome, and they were expecting that they would win in Uxbridge, whilst being aware, and they had been aware all the way through this campaign, of how damaging the ultra-low emission zone policy was for them. And Keir Starmer found himself, in fact, had put it directly to him just a couple of weeks ago, in a really tricky position on this, because he had his Labour Mayor of London saying one thing, his Labour candidate in Uxbridge saying something else, and he was trying to triangulate and put a foot in both camps and
no one cares,
not really
it's just
say
rain.
a great deal. We should make the broader point that Labour's victory in North Yorkshire was huge, and the Liberal Democrat victory in Somerset was huge. So it's been a very bad night for the Conservatives, not just as bad as they think.
I was going to say 21% is the overall swing away from the Conservatives. The headline is that the momentum in British politics is away from the government.
Yeah, and actually I do wonder, after all of the sound and fury and excitement of people like me and others in the last couple of weeks, if the narrative after this set of by-elections isn't vastly different from what it was before we even knew that they were being called, which was one of opinion polls suggesting that Labour were doing very well and perhaps heading in the direction of a victory, but where there were still some questions asked about how they might be successful in some parts of the country, some questions asked about how they should approach the coming year or so in the countdown to that election to try and solidify those opinion poll numbers into the kind of votes in ballot boxes that they'll need to see to win a general election. So in that sense, I wonder if that overall narrative will remain pretty similar.
John Curtis mentioned that it was a good night for the Greens by their in terms of what they would have hoped to get out of last night. They didn't really see. In terms of the Liberal Democrats, they're back with a by-election winning force, aren't they? They won 4 in this by.
Yeah, this win for them in Somerset is colossal. It is emphatic. There's no doubt about that. It was the most clear cut, actually, having been to visit all 3 constituencies in the last couple of weeks. It was the most clear cut in terms of the likely direction of travel. They are really excited about what it might mean for them in the wider West Country, which used to be something of a heartland for them prior to their near oblivion after their coalition years. So they think that a combination of a revival in their heartland plus the prospect of what they call the Blue Wall, places closer to London and the home counties where they're competitive with the Conservatives, mean that they are back again. But, and it's a big but, it is one thing when you can throw the entire party machine at one single constituency.
On the roads this morning, if you are around Smallthorne, the top of Smallthorne Bank that is, around the roundabouts, busy but moving slowly around Hanley Road, High Lane and Moorland Road. D Road up to the M6 at junction 16 is busy as you come up from Audley, and also Hanley and Trinity Street closed both directions. At the junction of Marsh Street North and Lower Foundry Street because of a police incident. If you know of any problems, give us a call. The number is 0800 121 8080.
Read this morning, the speaker this morning, I should say, is the Reverend Jane Manfredi.
Good morning.
Freddie.
My dad retired 2 years ago. He started work when he was 15 and he finally finished at 71. But because the country was locked down with COVID restrictions, there was no leaving party. No fanfare, no official acknowledgement. After 56 years of continuous hard work, he picked his tools up from the builder's yard one last time and went home. The end. His transition from a worker to a retired man went unmarked. Such was the fate of the millions of other people who experienced important, life-changing transitions during that period and were unable to find ways to meaningfully mark the moment during a time absent of shared community experiences. Today is the last day of school for many children and teens in the UK. Year 6 leaving primary school is one such transitional moment that is celebrated and acknowledged, sometimes with a service in the local church. The move from primary school into secondary not only signifies a geographical change, but also heralds the process of childhood being left behind. When I was a secondary teacher, I had responsibility for a Year 7 form, and so can attest to the culture shock which occurs when a class of comparatively tiny 11-year-olds arrive in September with their giant rucksacks and pristine blazers, devoid of the cynicism of their teenage counterparts in upper school. They very quickly learn. Marking important transitions seems to be a deeply felt need inside us, and this doesn't just include liminal moments where things change irrevocably, such as a retirement or leaving school. It also includes milestone anniversaries and birthdays, starting a new job or moving into a new home. These moments matter profoundly to people's lives. Places of worship can be a really important space in the community where these human stories interconnect with the story of God, where, through the use of ritual and prayer, people can be helped to process the magnitude of the moment and attest that we matter to God and are not forgotten in His sight. Ritual creates an opportunity for people to share in one another's joy and gives us a place to support each other in our losses. My dad has never complained that his retirement was ignored, and he wouldn't. He's the kind of man to just shrug his shoulders and say nothing. But I want to say that he matters. His hard work and dedication matter. That chapter in the story of his life is not forgotten. That's what sensitive pastoral ritual does. It declares publicly that we are cared for. Our stories matter.
That was Thought for the Day with the Reverend Jane Manfredi. It is now 11 minutes to 8. Let's take a quick look at the non-by-election news, which dominates the front pages of your printed papers. Obviously, if you read them online, they would have been updated with the by-election news. And on the front pages of many papers is the row about Nigel Farage. We're going to be talking about that in just a second. The Guardian inside describes it as a PR disaster entirely of the bank's own making. Mr Farage, you may recall, was described in an internal dossier as a disingenuous grifter, xenophobic, chauvinistic and racist in his views, and that bank has now, Goots, had to apologise to Mr Farage. The Guardian points out some nice little detail here that Goots is so well connected that there is a cash machine for Goots in the basement of Buckingham Palace. The Mail is very exercised about this. Its columnist Richard Littlejohn says these virtue signalling companies aren't sincere. They just want to avoid the wrath of the social media lynch mob. And he goes on to argue that I think the Coots crisis marks a tipping point, with the balance swinging away from political posturing and back towards the customer. Matt has a bit of fun on the front page of the Telegraph of this, with somebody going to a bottle bank, and on the bottle bank it says, underneath the words bottle bank, brackets, not for you, Mr. Vantage.
Some interesting stories on the front of the Mirror and the Times as well. The Mirror has a story suggesting that one of the central claims made by Prince Andrew in his 2019 Newsnight interview with Emily Maitlis was false. The court documents revealed in America that Prince Andrew's 2019 claim that he only met Jeffrey Epstein, the late sex offender, once in December 2010 after his 2008 13-month jail sentence had ended is not true. According to the court papers, the pair had lunch in June of that year while Epstein was under a 12-month house arrest order, and they had kept up. So that's a very significant change on the facts as supposedly revealed in that interview with Emily Maitlis on Newsnight. The last words of the Mirror story are Prince Andrew has been approached for comments. We don't really know his take on that. Interesting and important story at the top of the Times. Tax breaks for office checkups to stop staff being signed off. Workers and companies will be offered tens of millions of pounds in tax breaks for checkups and treatment to keep employees well enough to do their jobs under plans to reverse a post-pandemic surge in long-term sickness. This is this growing fear that we are sort of turning into a sick note nation, as some people call it, where long-term sickness is having a very big impact on the labour force and as a result on productivity and indeed growth.
And the Telegraph reminds us that the Lioness is still loose in the suburbs of Birmingham, despite the deployment of commandos, drone fleets, helicopters and an armoured vehicle in the search for a big cat.
Time now is 8 minutes to 8.
Nigel Farage
said that
has
to
his
some of my
boss
German
of
friends
NatWest,
last night.
Alison Rose, has declared that it is, quote, absolutely not on
One of the guys was like, is that actually a lion?
on the basis of
You can't
legally
really
held
see it
political
well. And the other one says,
views.
good, I hope it
But
eats
given
them all.
that's precisely what the policy of the exclusive Coots Bank, owned by NatWest, appeared to be, should this be the end of the matter, or do banks need, as Andrew Neil suggested on the programme yesterday, to concentrate on their knitting and stop
speed
telling
camera
their
going on.
customers what it
See
is
the
they
big
think
double
and what
flag?
it is we want to think. Let's reflect on
On this
that.
gantry here.
With the former
big
non-exec
camera.
director,
Oh,
T.S.
it says big
Millerman,
camera box.
known for his writing about the
top.
world of banking. Philip Walker. Morning to you, Philip.
Good morning, Nick.
Does it end
Who was
with this
speeding?
apology?
The black car.
I don't think way down there. This apology.
They drove that far back.
For NatWest.
I don't think he's going
Chief Executive
he's going away to
in particular, and for the banking industry in
20 miles an
particular,
hour.
you can't have what is essentially a kind of fundamental.
I know loads of people that have speeded. They're all the nice, really.
Who
Because
will say what?
remember, Top Gear is the thing where, like, is it like 50 or 60% of the speed cameras don't work?
Yeah, some of these
Well, let's
may
start
simply
with
be left on.
NatWest and Alison
So the
Rose.
lights deter people, but
It's
I
been
doubt
a
it
problem
because
with
these
this
all work
from her, isn't
electronically
it? It's
now.
in danger of sounding like don't blame
Yeah,
the
but there
other
are a load of
ones.
speed cameras that are
Yeah, I
just
think
There are.
that's right.
are just like psychological more than anything.
There are, but that one won't be one.
Knew about this.
Ones on here will be electronically linked to the fines office, who will probably be sending out a fine as we
Was
speak.
she briefed about it, or was it taken at a lower
I'm
level?
sure it's someone in a BMW far too busy.
Yeah,
Is that,
it will be.
to begin with, NatWest story was this is a straightforward commercial decision. Farage doesn't meet
I fucking hate BMW.
draft criteria to be backed with this kind of a
Sure, but
elite part of NatWest.
Can that be where one of the circles of hell
That's the
where people
original
go,
story.
BMW drivers?
Briefed as such.
Well, what we
The
thought
media,
so.
the BBC included, me included, were perhaps a bit too quick to swallow that line. Clearly, though,
Yeah.
there's a lot more to it.
Yeah, they have umbrellas, but I think they might take, I don't know if they take a break if it
They're
gets
saying
so
that
bad. I
it
don't
was
know
both,
idea.
aren't they, the size of his bank account and these issues, but the language used in that report would startle and I suspect outrage even people who loathe what Nigel Farage stands for.
I think that's right. I mean, banks have a right to scrutinise their customers. They're looking to pick up criminality. They're looking to pick up corruption. None of that is so. None of that applies in this case, as far as we know. This was just straightforward. We don't like this guy's views. It's just not on. Banks are not like any other business. They're not greengrocers. They're not butchers. They are
fundamental part of our structure. It's like a water company or the electricity company saying, no, we're not going to supply you because we don't like your political views. It can't happen.
So you think this could end in Alison Rose going?
It depends entirely.
Good job I put my coat in the thing.